TracerPlus as a family of products, TracerPlus Desktop being the design tool that runs under Windows. And I created a project called TracerPlus Intro. And TracerPlus as an application is organized into sessions, essentially um, forms or screens of data that you'd use to collect your data. So for this demonstration, I'm going to set up a scanning of items, and I'm going to demonstrate how to look up an item barcode that is scanned and return a description from some item master reference table. So I describe these as forms or sessions. They can also be used to store data tables, like the equivalent of a database table. So in this case, I just set up a couple of fields, one of them being the barcode. So when you scan the item barcode, I'm expecting that I'll do a lookup of the description. I marked it as read only so that it's not indicated that it could be changed. It's just used for reference. And then maybe you want to store a current location and a time of date of the scan. Right. So to support this description lookup, I did want to create a new session called Item Master, and this Item Master is really any number of fields related to an item. So it could be, a SKU or a size or a color, anything that might describe an item. In this case, I just have it as a generic description, and I'm going to use this Item Master description to do a lookup. So in the Scan Some Items session where you're scanning a barcode, the description is defined as a lookup, and the lookup field allows you to use the item master session as your source of data, and you're going to use a key field, sort of the identifying field, locally as the scan item barcode, and you're going to look up into the item master, the item barcode, right? So that's how the lookup is done, and then what you're going to return here is the source field for the result, and the result source field is the description, and if it's not found, we're going to set a return string, to indicate that it's not a valid item. So then next step for me at least would be to go into the Form Designer, and you can do things like, move things around. Maybe I want to move these guys down a little bit. You can control this to any degree you really want. The description, I decided, instead of being like these common single line items, I made into a multi-line by just selecting this to be true. So the next thing you'd want to do, of course, is save your project and then go ahead and deploy it to your device. So in my case, I'm going to be deploying it to a very screen share friendly app called TracerPlus PC. And I'm going to jump in there and just go ahead and download a project just by putting in my host address in this case. Or if you have a mobile device with a camera, you can scan this QR code here from TP Desktop. So I don't have a camera hooked up here, so I'm just going to go ahead and refresh my product list or project list and select it. And I named it here, TracerPlus Intro, right? So let's go down to TracerPlus. I'm going to go ahead and download this. So what we should see is a project that looks like what we did in the Form Designer, right? So there's two sessions. One is called Scan Some Items. Notice I called it Scan Some Items here. The other one's called Item Master, right? So typically the Item Master is going to contain your sort of reference data, right? And in here, I don't have any records. Typically, you would set up a TracerPlus Connect sync profile to perform that sync from a database or text file or, anything like that. In this case, I'm just going to add some items, right? I'm just going to call it, item 1. And let's call this, I don't know, cookies, 12 ounce, something like that. And maybe the case pack is 12, right? So I'm just going to save that. And then let's call this item 2. And this is description of item 2. And the case pack in this case is 24, right? Most typically this is going to be your barcode, right? So maybe it's going to be a number, maybe a UPC of 12 characters. And this will be crackers, family size, right? Whatever it is. And the case pack is 1 in that case. So we'll go ahead and save that. So I've just saved my item master of 3 records, but typically, like I said, you'd be syncing those, and it could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever the appropriate amount of data is for you. But really what I want to show is going in to your scan items session, right? So you'd go in here and go ahead and select, scan item barcode. So if I scanned or entered item 1, it's going to bring up, hey, this is cookies 12 ounce. And maybe I want to capture, a current warehouse location of A100, right? and then maybe it was I'm really scanning a barcode, something like that. It comes back as crackers family size, and then where's my current location? B100, right? Save that. So now I've just done two cycle count inventories or two cycle count transactions, basically updating the current location. So if I go in here and I do a view data, you can see here are my two items I scanned. Um, those are now ready to be synced. Typically, you'd be syncing those with TracerPlus Connect. We do support syncing to an API. Um, those are kind of options too. But again, I'm just doing this kind of as a high-level overview. But just to give you a quick show of what TracerPlus Connect is. So TracerPlus Connect is a Windows app. Again, just like TracerPlus Desktop, and it allows you to configure sources of data. So, for example, if I were to create a new project and create a new profile, I'm going to create a sync profile, and maybe I want to link it to this project I just created, right? TracerPlus Intro. So if I do that, there's the groupings of sync processes. Each individual sync process is driven by a source of data being pushed to a destination. So in this case, maybe I want to grab all the TracerPlus transactions I just captured in my scan some items session, right? If we remember that from desktop, and I want to send them to an ODBC data source. Maybe I want to send it to my sample database. Uh, I'll send it to my 5-field sample because I don't have a lot of fields here. Um, and I'll go ahead and just map these so that the item barcode is going to field 1, the description is going to field 2, and the current location is going to field 3. I could also add the date if I wanted into field 4. These field names are being driven, of course, by the database table definition. In our sample database, they are just field 1 through field 5, but if I used a different table, it would be something different, right? So that's all there is to it. Similarly, I could do, so let's call this sync scans, right? So similarly, I could update item master to device, something like that. In that case, the source of data might be ODBC again, as the source of data, and maybe it's my product list. I know I have a sample product list here. And what I want to do then, in this case, is send that data to TracerPlus, and I want to send it to the item master. And then what do I want to do as far as field mappings go, right? So my part number should map to my item barcode, my description should map to my description, and maybe my location would map to my, well, I don't have a location for my item master here, so I'll just get rid of this field. So it's important to note you don't have to map every field. So let's just do part number and description, right? Something like that. So now if I go ahead and save this, let's call it TracerPlus Intro. I could now set up in my desktop project here, I could move these, let's say move these up again, right? Move these back up and add a big button here to do a sync. And I could allow this sync to happen based on the Connect profile I just set up. Something like that, right? And when I add a button, I want to set the properties to be do sync. And when I set it to do sync, I have to set a host ID, which is where TracerPlus Connect is running. Typically, this is an IP address. In this reference here, we're just referencing it by an index, and I'll show you where that is in a minute, and then the profile ID. So the profile ID is here in Connect, profile ID 1, right? So when I click that button to sync, it's going to do this process, then this process, because I've told it to sync everything in profile ID 1. Right. So the only other thing I have to do then is set up my host ID. This is referenced as index 1, but there is no, under my project settings under Connect, there is no host, right? So I have to set that up. And that has to be 10.0.0.19, I think it was. Let's just double check that. Yeah, 10.0.0.19. And then we're going to sync to port 4403, right? So here again, I'm going to just go ahead and build and deploy this, and I'll re-push it out to the device because I've made some changes, right? If I go here again, I just go to download. You know what? Before I do that, let me fix one other thing. I noticed my date timestamp in my project here it wasn't set as a date time field, right? So now it's set as a date type field. So I'm just going to save that and go ahead here and re-download. And what we should see differently now is the sync button is included, right? So if I bring Connect up here and I go to my synchronize form, you can now see any activity that's happening, right? So typically this is going to be a mobile device on your Wi-Fi or your WAN network. In this case, I'm just locally set up to my same PC. But if we go into my view data, we can see my two items. If I go back in here, I can see now I have a sync button. So when I click this sync button, we should see some activity here. It might be kind of quick, but let's see if we see it. Right, so there it was, really fast. If I go to my data viewer, now all of a sudden, look, here's the items I just synced over. And then my item master has, part number 123, 124, 125. If I go in now to my item master on my device, we should see those actually as valid items in my item master. And there they are, right? Here, here, here. These are all synced from my device.